This is not good for the Phoenix Suns and could have serious implications for the roster as Collin Gillespie, two-way standout, has gotten an injury and will remain out for a long period of time. We also know with the Suns' main roster, Kevin Durant has suffered a calf strain and he'll be reevaluated in 2 weeks. So with the Suns gearing up for their game versus the Jazz and already playing one game with Kevin Durant, what are some changes? What are some things that we could see into this roster that can make them get the W in their NBA Cup debut versus the Jazz? We'll be diving into all of that and more on this episode of Suns Digest. I'm Bruce Veliz, and you guys have been absolutely fantastic showing your love and support for CJ and I. We're really, really appreciative of all the love and support you guys have been showing. So if you want to make sure you stay up to date on everything revolving around this team, make sure to hit that like button to stay in that Suns algorithm. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's dive into the videos at hand today. Make sure to grab a snack. And like we said in the introduction, this is not good for the Phoenix Suns. So we dive in and we'll be looking at an injury to Collin Gillespie, one of the Suns' three two-way players that they do have under roster. Gillespie, member of the Nuggets organization the previous couple seasons, has had some run in the NBA, but at the end of a rotation. And for the Suns. Here he joins on a two-way contract to be able to give him some extra play time down with the Valley Suns. And in their inaugural season have already been off to a pretty hot start. Similar to like the Suns, already off to a nice start. The Valley Suns are 2-1, and unfortunately for them, they're going to be having to deal with this injury to Collin Gillespie. If we want to look at this for immediate release, courtesy today, this morning, actually around 9 a.m. Phoenix time, Phoenix Suns guard Collin Gillespie will be out with a right ankle fracture, where he will be reevaluated in 4 weeks. And if we want to get a little bit of a better understanding, we're going to be looking at Dwayne Rankin here, courtesy another fantastic Arizona reporter. He breaks down going into Collin Gillespie was at the Phoenix Suns game versus the Kings with a boot on. Played in the Valley Suns opener at Santa Cruz, scored 5 quick points on 2-2 from field goals, but injured his ankle right after that, where he checked out with 9:35 left in the first. Phoenix Suns first listed him with a right ankle sprain, and now obviously that has been evaluated and now been realized as a right ankle fracture. So a little bit more severe for a player in Collin Gillespie, and that is not good for the Phoenix Suns. Ultimately, like I mentioned, this Valley Suns team had come off to a hard start, and having one of their two-way players and better players getting hurt in their season opener just isn't great, especially for off to a hot start. Not only for the Suns, but for Collin Gillespie, as Gillespie, like I mentioned, was on the Nuggets roster last year, and with this Suns team kind of playing on a two-way, was looking to kind of guarantee him a roster spot. With the Suns having a final roster spot open, I know they have an abundance of guards, but if Gillespie looked solid enough to where he could translate and maybe even take over a position for somebody in that guard role, or even if some of those players got injured and Gillespie had to step up and deliver, he could cement himself a full standardized contract. But if not, he would then still garner some playing time and warrant some action in the G League playing on a two-way deal, which would be bringing him the best of both worlds. And for the Suns, it allows them to kind of see what they have with a young, untapped potential piece of player who was in the NBA not too long ago and could very well be back at that state in the future. So for Gillespie, this is a not great thing, obviously being out for the foreseeable future, but the Suns do have some young, bright, promising pieces, and we'll discuss those in future videos. But the Valley Suns are looking to get off to a hot start and look pretty dominant in this G League. So let me know what you guys think down below on Collin Gillespie's injury in the comment section, how you guys feel about it. How do you think it severely impacts the Suns? I know it doesn't really mainly impact the main roster, but for this Valley Suns team, he is a big contributor and would have been one of their better players if fully healthy. But we're wishing nothing but a speedy recovery for Gillespie. But let's dive into the news. Also, talking about Kevin Durant, and we mentioned this earlier in a previous video, talking about who steps up without Kevin Durant. But we're going to look at it with a bigger glass because last video we talked about this. Obviously, we hadn't seen the Suns without Durant, and they obviously had played only one game since, but that was versus a Sacramento Kings team that was a tough matchup. As we all know, it went to overtime, and the Suns did have some players did fight for it and bring out some valiant matches, but they ultimately did fall short late in overtime. The Kings just got hot way too quick And unfortunately for the Suns, their three guys are producing offensively were their guards, and everybody else was kind of shot from that aspect. But we did see a player get that starting nod for Kevin Durant, and we now know who that player is. If we want to look the stat sheet, we obviously can see Ryan Dunn was a player that was given that start, and it was a little bit of a debate here. Should it have been Ryan Dunn? Should it have been Royce O'Neal? Who really fills in for that role? And Suns felt comfortable with Royce O'Neal playing that six-man role already with this team, that he could still stay in those shoes and did not want to disrupt his cohesionness with this roster. So they put in player Ryan Dunn, who looked decent, 4 for 7 from the field in this contest. Played pretty solid defense, but neither him or Royce O'Neal could really buy a bucket from three-point land for the Suns. A combined 2 for 10 for both Ryan Dunn and Royce O'Neal, and that is just a bad thing for the Suns, especially against a high octane offense in the Sacramento Kings, a high paced, high value team. You got to be able to compete with them on the offensive side, and unfortunately for the Suns, they failed to do that. But for the Suns, like we mentioned, they do have some forward group, and Ryan Dunn and Royce O'Neal will be those names to kind of keep it and look out for, kind of really step up in that role. And I was in the role of pushing for Royce O'Neal to get this start. Now Dunn obviously did, and we could see some shakeup obviously coming into this game versus the Jazz. But with Durant still being sidelined at least for another 2 weeks until he's at least reevaluated, the Suns will be without Durant for two of their games of in this NBA Cup. Friday versus the Thunder, and obviously tonight versus the Jazz. Now for the Jazz, it is a little bit easier. The Jazz are a team that is towards the bottom of the Western Conference, but don't let that fool you, because the Jazz do have some nice, competent players, and Colin Sexton and Lauri Markkanen, that could really take over and make this Jazz team sneak a win versus a Suns team. The Suns do have to come out fully together, fully cohesion, with a top tier cohesion, and be ready to go and ready to rumble against a Utah Jazz squad. I still feel confident that they will get the job done. And I do feel confident in Dunn and O'Neal to step up and deliver for this Suns team, with them losing Durant. But I'd like to see Royce O'Neal kind of get that start tonight. I know we saw Dunn get it last time, but I'd like to see how Royce looks in this starting lineup. Like I mentioned, I think Royce can kind of bring that veteran physicality that Durant obviously brings, and plays very similar to Durant at that 3-and-D wing type of ask. Obviously, he's not that great of as talented of a scorer as Durant, but Royce O'Neal is having some very, very solid shooting numbers this season. Besides that last game that we just looked at, he is shooting lights out. So implementing him into that starting lineup could be that just added three-point shooter that is necessary, but the Suns could use that shooting off the bench. So keeping Royce off the bench could be what they decide to go. Ultimately, whatever Mike Budenholzer decides to do, I trust. But against a Jazz team, I'd like to see the Suns squad bounce back from a little bit of a loss that they should have had in Sacramento there the other night. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section, how you guys are feeling about this Phoenix Suns team as they gear up for their first NBA Cup game tonight. Like I mentioned, every team is on gearing up for the NBA Cup. It is going to be a fantastic slate of basketball today. So drop down your comments, drop down your thoughts, how you guys feel about this Suns team down below in the comment section. Like I said, you guys have been absolutely fantastic, showing your love and support for the channel, and we're really, really appreciative of CJ and I over here on Suns Digest. So thank you guys so much. Once again, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your day, and go Phoenix Suns. Peace out, everybody.